Hey boys.
What's up, Ravi?
Nice to meet you guys. I mean, thanks for having me. This is awesome.
It was awesome that you hit us up. Like, I uh, I'm a stand-up comic too, so like I'm a history
I saw
professor,
that.
and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
do like so. It was really cool to like see somebody who was a comic, but also like you've got this other side, and also we'll get into this like watching you try to temper the fact that you're actually, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
there's
sure,
so many
sure.
like sentimental moments where I was like, oh God, like I would break right there.
Well, I'm dead inside, which is why I'm perfect for the
Also, probably why you got a show and I don't. So you know what I'm saying?
You
And,
guys are
and
doing some cool
North
shit.
Carolina connection.
Yeah. Oh, guys. I mean, by the way, we can talk about this on the show if you want, but I mean, we're about to do an East Coast tour at the end of this year to go check out spots to move to. And
Welcome back.
North Carolina's on the list. Nashville's in the top
Oh,
two. By the way, are you in this? Are you near Murfreesboro?
No, we live like in Nashville. We're like
You're
right
in
in East
Nashville?
Nashville. We're like, I mean, you could. It's like less than 3 miles to like downtown, like the stadium and everything
Uh,
where we are. But if you come
okay.
through town, come by, man. Like we'll be happy to show you around.
I would love that. Yeah. I mean, we're looking at kind of the South. Like we want to get wherever we move, we want to be in one, like some incredible neighborhood with a ton of kids. But then we also kind of would love a lot of land and a lot of animals. So I don't know where we end up.
Dude,
Where are
there.
you, Bob? Are you in,
I'm near Raleigh.
you're in Durham?
Yeah, yeah,
Durham?
yeah. Between Durham and Raleigh.
What's between Durham and Raleigh?
Well, you know what's between Durham and Raleigh. I used to live here,
Oh, you live in Chapel Hill.
near Chapel Hill. Yes.
Okay, good. Well, look, you can see
I
this.
live between Durham, Raleigh, and Chapel
What?
Hill.
Robbie, that was our last live show before everything shut down. That was the Road to
God,
Now's last live show was Catch Credit.
God.
In fact, that's where COVID started, at the Cat's Cradle.
Little do people know just yet. As soon as contact tracing catches up.
I'm patient zero, actually.
That's so awesome.
Well, let's start because we're going to just talk
Yeah,
about
let's do it.
all the good
I think
stuff.
maybe we already did.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm Bob Crawford,
I'm Ben Sawyer.
and this is the road to now. And the road takes us to Los Angeles, Ravi.
That's right. That's right.
Ravi Patel, welcome.
Hey guys, it's so good to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm a fan of the show. I mean, I'm going to just come out of the gates and be very honest. I emailed you guys because I wanted to do your show. And the road to now for us started with obviously the Avett brothers, which I'm a big fan of. My wife is I mean, it's weird in my opinion, the extent to which she likes you guys. And that, you know, she told me you have a podcast. I started listening. I'm like, oh my God, this is really intelligent. And that's how I was introduced to you. And yeah, I just wanted to have a conversation with y'all. So I appreciate you having me.
Well,
Great.
thank you so much for reaching out. And you spent a lot of time in North Carolina. Did your wife also spend time in North Carolina?
Yeah, she's from Georgia. And by the way, I think that was the other thing that got me excited was just like, oh, these guys are kind of from my hood. I'm from Charlotte. I went to school in Chapel Hill. My wife's from Atlanta. She went to Emory. But of course, we both met in LA. Yeah.
So did you know the band when you were in North Carolina?
No, I finished in '01. And by the way, your other bandmate, I listened to the episode with Joe.
Yeah.
And we overlapped because he said he finished in '02. I finished in '01. And his story, by the way, his immigrant story is actually really, first of all, it's fascinating, but I obviously have a bias towards those stories because he referenced at one point this, and I think it's probably the same piece of legislation that brought most Indian Americans over here, which was in the late 60s, 70s. There was this legislation that essentially recruited engineers, doctors, lawyers, these kind of high skill position from, I think, specifically Asian countries. I'm not sure. And that was actually the first wave of, I guess, I think it's the same thing, Korean immigrants, but also Indian immigrants. That's why everyone thinks Indians are all geniuses, is because the first generation was literally the smartest people in the country.
That was amazing. I was thinking about that. Like, and by the way, we should go ahead and say this. Ravi Patel's Pursuit of Happiness premieres. If you're listening to this episode the day it launches, it's going to be August 24th. You're just a couple days away from the launch on
August 27th.
27th.
August 27th on HBO Max. By the way, do we edit this? Does this get edited?
Yeah, it'll get edited.
Okay, good, because I feel bad, but my name is pronounced Ravi, but I don't care at this point if you or should I can look at y'all's faces.
I watched every minute of the streamers that you sent me, and somehow I didn't pick that up.
No, it never gets picked up. But it's pronounced like lovey-dovey Ravi. But I also can correct you in the middle of the show so that we don't lose anything we've discussed. It happens all the time. I don't actually give a shit, by the way. I just like heard it. I was like, oh, I would be a dick if I didn't correct them at this point.
Why don't we just leave all that in?
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
leave all that in. It's also like, what's wrong with me?
What's funny, actually, I grew up being called Ravi, exactly the way y'all pronounced it. Which, if you look at the name, that's how it's pronounced. And at some point in college, actually, I guess it was my like different world moment where I realized I'm going to make people pronounce it the right way. And then when I became an actor, I so often get roles that are either written for me or then renamed to fit my ethnicity. Okay. So like if a role is, in the past, sometimes I'll get cast as Greg. Less so now. Now I think I've played a Greg, but like back in the day, they're like, you don't look like a Greg. We're gonna call you Ravi, and I'm like, okay, well, you're gonna call me Ravi because if it's gonna be like blast out to the world, I want to kind of teach young Indian boys out there that they don't have to anglicize their name. There, that was a really long.
No, but I think it's great because I grew up listening to Ravi Shankar. Did I just say his name wrong?
I don't think there's any mispronunciation of the name. I know plenty of people who go by Ravi. I've heard of people go by Revi. I guess it's just, if you're going by the way it's pronounced in Indian languages, the A is a sound. Okay, but like take Ravi Shankar, who is probably more British than he is Indian, right? I mean, like maybe, I don't know actually, because he was, I think when he was 30 or something, when he was pretty old when he moved. Anyway, my point, it actually brings up an interesting conversation about intersectionality.
Right.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
But I in general am not the kind of I don't believe in getting offended unless there's a malicious intent, generally speaking. So I would never say it's the wrong way. I just give people an opportunity to say it the way that I think it should be pronounced. And after that, you can call me whatever you want. It won't bother me.
All right, William. Well, let's get moving on talking about your new show where you pursue happiness.
Yeah.
No, Ravi, I got it. It's also the Southern thing where you're just like, you're going to lay into a vowel,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. But by the way, you just nailed it, Ben. Did that feel good coming out of the gates for you?
Lovey-dovey Ravi. It did. It
Yeah,
felt great.
good,
it felt
bro.
true. It felt like the truest thing I've done all day.
Didn't slow down the sentence at all. Yeah. August 27th, Pursuit of Happiness comes out on HBO Max. It's 4 episodes. And the premise is that basically every episode I travel with someone in my life and we have some sort of big question. And that's kind of the thing that takes us through this international destination.
And the episode that Ben and I were fortunate to be able to watch was with your parents. And it was about aging.
Yeah, we went to Mexico together. We went to one of the hottest retirement destinations for expats in the world, and that is a town called Merida in Mexico. And just to give everyone a little backstory, I mean, like the way that I even figured out which episodes to do was I basically was like, okay, like if I'm gonna go make this show, I want to make something that even if it gets canceled was still awesome. And I know that from experience of being canceled so often in my career. So I was like, okay, I want this to be something I actually enjoy, but also if it goes on forever, I want it to be something that I can enjoy. So that was where the travel with someone in my life part came from, because I don't want to travel alone. And then I figured the only way that the show can really be good, because I'm not an expert in anything. I'm not academics like you guys. I'm not an expert in anything like these people with food shows. But I thought what I could do is be curious and adventurous in earnest. And that is something that I've done before, with Meet the Patels, the documentary I made with my sister. So I was like, okay, I just got to make sure that whatever I'm doing, I really care about. And so I basically prioritized the first 4 episodes by the things that I was like mattered the most to me right now in this moment. I'm 41 years old. I have a 3.5-year-old daughter. I'm somewhat newly married. We've been married for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. I should probably know the answer to that. And becoming a father for me was a real epiphanous moment in terms of that my parents have been obsessing with me the way that I'm obsessing over my daughter now. And they've been doing it for so long. And it was just a real moment of, I guess, empathy and wanting to figure out a way to be the best son to them and ask the questions that I would regret having not, like the questions that I would be asking after they've passed that I wish I'd asked sooner. So that's where that episode came from. And just to run through the other 3 episodes, we did an episode in Japan with my wife that's about parenting and marriage. Japan, known for doing the most innovative things in pretty much everything. Went to Denmark. That was an episode that was more like urgently American, because Denmark is known as one of the happiest places in the world, except for how it's treating its immigrants, specifically its refugees. And that, I mean, like, it was a shocking thing to find out about Denmark, but the more you got into the details, the more it seemed exactly what is going on over here. And then we also did an episode in South Korea with one of my best friends who, like me, is an entrepreneur and has kind of these workaholic tendencies. And so that's an episode about, that's about work-life balance. We all live in this time where we're overscheduled, overexcited, have too much choice in every minute of the day. And as a result, we have trouble being satisfied. And South Korea as a country is going through kind of this existential work-life crisis, suicide rates, depression, all these things are up there. I just gave like a very long answer to what should have been much simpler. But Mexico with my parents is where the whole journey began. And man, it was fun.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ben.
I feel like there's so much in these episodes that like there are these moments, like you said, when you have a child. Like I'm 41, I'm the same age. I've got a 5-year-old son. And
Nice.
thank you.
Yeah, it's a lot, I bet.
But I feel like everyone prepares you for, like, you're going to have this kid and the kid's going to consume you. And what no one really talks about, and I think maybe this gets at some of the more like the heavier stuff you get at in this episode, what no one gets you ready for is the entirely new role you play as both a parent and a child. And that point where everything's about the baby and everything's about you, but you start appreciating what your parents did for you. And you start, I mean, since I've had a kid, like anytime I see the parents of any of my friends who just let me come to their house, I'm like, thank you so much. It means so much to me. And you really get at this, man. And when you went to Mexico, like you really talked a lot about struggling with that, right? I mean, you're here, you've got a kid, but you've got your parents, man. Could you talk about like how that plays out and how that wrapped into Mexico?
Yeah, I mean, and by the way, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, talk about real appreciation for sure. When you become a parent, you start to think about all those parents, by the way, growing up that would feed you.
Yes.
And for you, it was like a right. Like you didn't think that there was like money or resources or exhaustion behind that. Like I look back at some people's parents and I'm like, oh shit, I should like mail them a check. Like they must have hated me. I was always there and they were always feeding me. So yeah, I see what you're saying. I think, look, the fundamental question that I've been trying to ask, and this, by the way, started in just a therapy session where I was telling my therapist that I was like, I've never been to a funeral, which is crazy. And I was like, so I feel like I don't understand death in a way that this is a weird thing to say, but in the way that I'd like to at this age. And I was like, I know that whenever it happens to someone I love, it's probably going to be really hard, or I'm not going to know how to process it because I have such little experience with it. So what, I guess what I'm saying is I want to make the most, how do I know how to make the most time? How do I know to make the most of the time that all of us have left together? Because I'm realizing that a lot of my friends' parents are starting to pass away. I'm realizing that not a lot, but some people my age were starting to lose. And I also I remember when I turned 40 having like this very contrived TV moment where I looked in the mirror, and it was like this realization of like, oh man, like I need to find a way to like enjoy my day today, because I had been so conditioned to achieve. And if you look on paper, it's like, oh my God, he's doing so great. But then I realized, I'm like, oh, I don't even remember that it happened. I'm not even sure that I enjoyed it. Fatherhood, turning 40 was really this turning point for me of figuring out a way to make sure that morning to night I'm having a good time, and that's the priority. By the way, COVID has been amazing in terms of the lessons in that department.
Yeah.
In terms like figuring out a way, work now fits my day, not the other way around. And so, yeah, we went to Mexico to really start, we went to a place where people are there, which I think what's most surprising about that kind of retirement, going to destination, is that people there they're leaving their communities behind later in life to go start anew. And in my mind, I would always have done it with the friends that I've always had up to that point, with all my best friends. Yet these people in Mexico, they've never been happier. And so I think that was eye-opening, not just to me, but to my parents. The financial realities of it, I think, were really eye-opening. Just how inexpensive it was.
26 grand a year is what you said in the show, and that blew my mind.
Isn't that wild?
Yes.
Well, that's another reason why we're leaving LA, by the way.
Yeah.
Like that's another reason why we're moving out of LA. I was like, you know what? Like, we're never ever going to have enough money in LA, because even if you have whatever you decide enough is, there's this toxicity of urban culture that is probably maybe we can escape it, but I'd rather not have to fight that battle of always wanting more. And so I want to go somewhere where we can lower our overhead and reduce the work equation in our life. So by the way, a big reason why we're going to the East Coast is because we want to be closer to our grandparents. So I mean, this is a direct result of that journey. We're like, okay, let's go east and be closer to the parents. So
So this was the thing with your parents deciding where do they want to spend their retirement, and you guys talk about this a lot. Your mother even quips at one point, you live near your grandchildren, you play with your grandchildren, and then you just die. Is that what you want? Is that what you want, or do you want to go to Mexico and have this it's like Cocoon there. It's like this playland.
Yeah.
Senior citizens, and it's like this new chapter where you say you kind of like, hey kids, we raised you, now we're going to have some fun. We love you. We'll see you once or twice a year, maybe 3 times, but now we're going to have some fun. And so where are your parents? Can I ask you where your parents are now post Pursuit of Happiness?
Yeah, I can tell. I mean, they have started building their own retirement community in North Carolina with a bunch of other Indians. And it's going to be like this, like, I don't know, elderly resort.
The question I wanted to ask you tonight,
yeah,
can I play golf with your father? Would he come and play golf with me?
I mean, do you think you can beat him? He lit me up, dude.
I don't know. I'm just breaking 100. I'm just breaking 100.
That's actually really good. You'll beat both of us.
So let's go back for everyone who's listening that hasn't gotten a chance to see the show yet.
Okay.
Your parents are central in this first episode. They're also central in your film, The Patels.
Mhm.
So tell us the story about it, because we were briefly talking earlier about
Meet
there
the
being
Patels?
programs. Well, just about your family background, because
Mhm.
we were talking about the program and how it related to Joe Kwan's life, where his family was came over here under a program from South Korea. Under a program to bring immigrants in. Your family came under a similar type of program, yeah?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I'm not sure that, as I said earlier, I was listening to the episode y'all did with Joe, and he mentioned that about his family history. And I was like, oh, I wonder if that's the same program that brought my parents over in the late 60s, early 70s, which was essentially some sort of legislation that recruited people of skilled positions from Asian countries, I believe, like doctors, lawyers, scientists, engineers, and basically extracted the cream of the crop from these places. Like my dad was like top 1% of 1%. And most Indian people in America who are my age and American born are part of that. Like their parents are part of that initial wave, which is why everyone, at least grown up, thought Indians were all geniuses, is because our parents were those people and we're just like trying to keep up with them.
Which is the opposite of America's program, which is we send our young people abroad for spring break, and then that's the way
they. Yeah, which by the way is exactly what I did, and it was great. Yeah, and so yeah, my dad came. I want to say it was maybe 67 or so. My dad came to Chicago. I'll send you all this video I made for Sarah Silverman had this like show on Hulu last year, and we did this thing with my dad where we retraced dad's steps from when he landed in India, from when he landed in Chicago 51 years ago or 52 years ago.
I think I saw that on YouTube.
You did with me. It was that's what it was.
The guy picked him up. This guy picks him up, and he gets in the car with another Indian gentleman picks him up.
One of his best friends, whose son we're also best friends with. Yeah, who he lived with, who he came to America from India with. And we're all best friends even today. And we retraced the steps. Yeah, we surprised them with the first car that they had, this like convertible. And we went to the bus stop that they came into. We went to their old apartment. We walked through it. I mean, it was awesome. We went up this like street in Chicago, Devon Street, which is like in America known as one of the kind of major kind of Indian streets where Dad used to live. It was a magical, I mean, it was one of the best days of my life. So that's how Dad got here. Then he went and married Mom, brought her over from India. And most Indian immigrants from that generation, specifically Gujarati Indians, which are the kind of Indian I am, last name Patel, Desai, Shah. These are all called Gujarati Indians. There's like 15 different Indian states. This is one of the major states. Gujarati Indians especially are known for building this, I don't know, this immigrant Ponzi scheme. Like my dad shows up. His dad borrows money from the entire village just to get, enough money to fly him here. Okay. They land, they get a bunch of jobs while they're going to school. As soon as they can send money back to the village to pay back the rest of the village, they do that. But then you go into phase 2, which is go home, get married. Okay. You bring that person over. Okay. Phase 3 is not only do you start a family, but you start bringing the village to you now, and you're funding it. Okay. So my house growing up, I'm not kidding you, was like an immigrant halfway house. New Patels in there all the time in my bed. Like, just like, and we would go pick them up from the airport. We'd bring them home. They barely speak English. Mom's giving them driving lessons. Dad's taking them and like they're loaning them money to help them kind of start some sort of a business. I don't know if you're familiar with the story of motels in America, but something like 60% of the motels in this country are owned by Patels. And the reason is because they figured out this next generation, there's my dad's generation, and then there's this next generation, the one that they brought over, which is usually their brothers, their sisters, the other people from the village, okay, their entire families. Those people weren't necessarily the cream of the crop academically. They didn't speak necessarily English as well. They weren't necessarily as educated or as skilled in something. So how do you get these people over here and give them a sustainable life? Well, they figured out they'll buy these dilapidated motels, get rid of the entire staff. The family will live in the first 1, 2, 3 units. They'll combine the first 3 units. They'll live there. Okay. They did really cool innovations. Like I read that like one of the big innovations they did was like they took the washing machine and dryer and they put it behind the front desk so that the front desk person could wash laundry while they were, working the front desk. By the way, right behind that washer dryer is the door. You open that door, that's unit number 1. That's their home. And there's a bunch of Indians in there. And they just did all the jobs and they grinded and they would create the equity. They would basically get equity in the motel, use that to buy another motel. Next thing you know, all these people are millionaires and we're the fastest minority per capita in this country. It's kind of evidence of socialism working, actually. The Patel, the Patel community, Indian Americans in general, and I would say aggressively with Gujaratis, are community first, community before the individual. Now, I'm not saying there aren't downsides to that. There certainly are.
People sleeping in your bed.
Yeah, and also, their individuality isn't necessarily valued to the extent. I mean, that's one of the beautiful things about our country. But I would say we're probably at the other extreme in terms of individuality over here.
So can we go back to phase 2? So your
Yeah.
father comes here, goes back, he marries your mother.
Right.
Did they know each other? I mean, were they?
No.
Was this an arranged marriage?
No. They, this was an arranged marriage. They knew each other for 10 minutes or so, and it was an interview process. And this goes back to what I was just telling you about the community first thing. Marriage, and by the way, this used to be the case in Western culture too. The concept of love marriage, I think, anthropologically is like a new-ish thing, I believe.
Like late 19th century, basically.
With Indians, think India being a traditionally poor country, it's on the up now, but certainly back then, poor. Marriage was not about 2 people finding their soulmates. No, they don't have time for that shit. Marriage was an economic alliance between 2 groups of people. The hope being that this alliance would make the group stronger. That is the premise of, I would say, most things in the Indian community, but certainly marriage. And that is why, Meet the Patels, which is a documentary that my sister and I made. And it's about my parents setting me up with Indian girls around the country. And that expectation that they had upon me was rooted in not some sort of a racist, like it wasn't like a some sort of need for homogeny or anti-white or anti-black or it was none of that, though a lot of that does get tangled in there. It's really because from their perspective, marriage is, first of all, their job. It is kind of one of the main it's one of the main kind of like measurements of their success as parents, because family is a business and your most important product is the legacy and how the business grows under you through your through your kids. And so they see marriage and the concept of semi-arranged marriage is the way it's done now, which is that they introduce Indian Americans to these matrimonial biodatas, or matrimonial resumes called biodatas. Basically like a resume, literally. You guys got to watch this movie. It'll blow your mind. And it's because it's seen as an alliance. It's an opportunity to make the clan stronger.
So if you watch Pursuit of Happiness, though, your parents seem very much in love.
They are.
Yeah, they are, man. They are. And I think they're a testament. We joke in the documentary that most people date and then get married. We did it the opposite. but man, my parents are I mean, so in love and just wonderful human beings. And I think that's a testament. Look, all three of us are married, correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
The work, everything before the marriage is such bullshit. There's no, I should have asked this earlier. Is it okay that I'm swearing, guys? Is it too
Yeah,
late?
You're fine. We'll
absolutely.
just, make it explicit.
Okay, great. Okay. I fucking promise I will not. Okay. So I'm kidding.
We'll take that one.
Yeah, that one, that's gone. Yeah, my parents I think are evidence of the most important tenets of arranged marriage, which is commitment and compatibility. And if you think about, I would argue that all three of our experience in marriage is that, I'm not saying there isn't due diligence happening during the dating pre-marriage phase, but none of it's true. Everyone's selling themselves. I didn't even know that I was selling a false version of myself until, shit got hard. And when things get hard is when you really realize, and that to me is when the marriage begins. Because that's when you're like, okay, we gotta lay down some bricks. We gotta build a foundation for this thing. And I think my parents are evidence of that. And I would argue they almost had a foundation better than most Americans because their relationship started with a commitment that was bigger than themselves. This idea that there's no choice but to make this work. And making it work is the point of this thing. I think so often in Western culture, the point for so many people is love. And you guys are married. Would you still be married if it was just about love all the time? Are we always in love?
Yeah.
No. I definitely would have been left by now many times.
Same.
Well, Ravi,
Yeah.
isn't it really that the definition of love expands in marriage, right?
Absolutely.
It becomes deep. The breadth and the scope of love takes on a weight, and you can't. The things that you are going to go through in your marriage, things that my wife and I have gone through, man,
Right.
there is no dating that prepares you for anything close to it.
That's right.
And
That's
you
right.
need to be committed to we're going to make this work. We're going to make this work. Yeah.
Make this work is, I would say, the part that matters most because you're right. I mean, when you're dating, and this is something that I think this is a specifically Western thing, though. Like, if you think about the way love is portrayed in movies, it's this romanticized. It's just this feeling. It's like, oh, like I bumped into them, spilled some coffee on them, and now we're in love. Like, you're right. It expands. Love. I mean, it's good to have that feeling. I think that feeling's great, and it's a rush. And hopefully, but I think over time with marriage, to your point, as the scope expands, that feeling itself actually reinvents itself in different ways, right?
Exactly.
That juice, that feeling of like when you get through, like my wife and I, we went through, our hardest period when our first kid was born, and it was dark at times, and I'll be honest, it was hopeless at times. But I was telling her recently, I was like, I don't mean to sound sick or twisted because she had, some tough stuff around the pregnancy and with the baby and all that too. And I was like, but there's a part of me that's really grateful for that because I feel like that is really when what we have now is real love, in my opinion. And I only know now that we didn't actually have it before. We said we loved each other, but we didn't actually know each other well enough. We hadn't done the work. And now I actually feel like you're my best friend. Like, I actually feel like we're in this.
Well, I'll bring this back around to a concept you were talking about earlier, but I think, when we think about the way love is portrayed, like in love movies or, rom-coms and all of this, it's the story of it. It's the story of a protagonist, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the story of an individual or two individuals finding each other. It's not the story of the couple, right?
Right.
So like the story concludes with the end of like what would be the end of the individual. And it stops there, right? But what the story that actually matters in marriage is far less like has far fewer like twists and turns and like deep dives and then sparkling like meetings on New York. It's just like,
that's a good
dude,
point.
like I haven't
The
slept
end
in
of the
3
movie is
days.
actually where it starts.
Exactly. Because it's not, I mean,
that's
this
a good point.
we're not, we're writing about, it's the story circle, right? I mean, we're following a person usually. But this gets back at something that I think is remarkable that came out of the episodes, like the 4 together. It's you go other places, you go to these different countries and you're not, what I love is you're not looking for what's different. You go to these countries to find what's similar and to look at it from a different perspective. But you see this first sign of it at the dinner with you and your family in Mexico, where, your parents are talking with, the older Mexican family members.
Right.
And it's just like, oh yeah, like we really care about family and like we would never leave each other. And we're like, oh, Indians or Mexicans are the same. And then you go to Japan and people are like, we live for our family. We do this stuff right here. It's like, oh yeah, Japanese people. And it's like, maybe it's just that Americans are different. Right? I mean, in this sense.
That's interesting. Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I do know that one thing that's happening, I won't limit it to Americans. I'll say Westerners, but I think it's probably heightened in America, is that we have, there's plenty of articles about this. We are in a crisis of community and family. It's just not what it used to be. And if I had to guess, I think it's a confluence of a couple things. One, this country is built upon what I would say is a very respectable pillar of individuality. And so, like my wife, who is American, okay, she's half white, half Afghan. She's very American in the sense that she has like boundaries and stuff like that in her family, like privacy. They don't say things like, like, which I don't even understand that stuff. Like we don't even have boundaries in my family. We have, like, in fact, I think too many opinions. And but that's an American thing, people having their own things, people within families. I remember kids growing up, my American friends being like, well, that's mine. I'm like, what does that even mean? Like, yeah, it's my, I don't care. It's my mom's money, not mine. What? Like,
one of my favorite things your mom says in there is that Americans plan everything. She's like, Americans plan everything.
Oh yeah. Very type A, I say collectively. But in addition to the individuality thing, I think we also live in a moment right now where we're not dependent, right? So you want to ride to the airport, you do Uber. You don't ask your neighbor. You don't. I mean, look at the breakdown of the neighborhood. I read a great article about this in The Atlantic a few months ago, actually. It's like, the neighborhood itself, and this is something that the pandemic has really been eye-opening for me. The neighborhood itself used to be so different. Everyone used to be way more dependent, everyone more interactive. People used to have more happening on their front yards. Now people are doing more in their backyards. What's been great about the pandemic, which I realize is almost an oxymoronic statement, or like an ironic statement at least. The upside for me is all of a sudden in my neighborhood, I've seen my neighbors that I didn't even know lived here. And I see them on bikes with their kids. We're walking by each other. Everyone's outside and moving around. Not as much as everyone was like 4 months ago, but still.
You're in the valley, right? So
yeah, I'm in the valley. I'm in this amazing family neighborhood. But I'm like, oh, this must be what it was like back in the kind of glory days of America. This is what the neighborhood is all about. And by the way, it's again one of the things that we're moving to go seek. Can I ask you guys a question? I want to know, like, you watch this Mexico episodes, this Mexico episode. Bob, I know you just lost one of your parents recently. Ben, I mean, I'm curious, where are your parents? How did watching this episode impact the way you view your relationship with parents, and maybe your role as a father and husband as well?
Bob, you take that one first.
Oh, I thought that was to you, Ben.
It's to both of you.
Okay. Well, I lost my father, and I told you, Ravi, after I watched it, that I had a very emotional response to watching Pursuit of Happiness. And You know what? It's funny because when you reached out, like my daughter, she doesn't sleep very well. And so it was like 2:30 in the morning and I was up with her. Like she gets up, she'll go to bed at 8:30 and then she's up at 1 o'clock and then she's up at 2 o'clock and then she's up at 3 o'clock. And it was one of these times. And the thing that you don't ever want to do, because you want to try to get back to sleep, don't look at your phone.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was a terrible night. And she was up every 20 minutes. I was on my phone and I'm a one every 3 or 4 days on Instagram. So go on Instagram and I saw your message and I was like, who is this? And I'm so skeptical, of just
Sure. Me too. I hear you.
HBO, big fan. That what? And so, I was like, whatever. But then, I looked you up and then, we communicated via email and then I watched The Pursuit of Happiness. And here's what I thought about when I was watching it. People have been coming up to me for years and up to the band and saying what our music means to them. Right. And, these songs were written from one perspective. They're given to the world and they become everybody's, and everybody puts their own, through everyone's lens, right? That's how they view the song. And it takes on one song has 50,000 different personal meanings to different. Right. Yeah. And I watched this and that's how I felt about watching Pursuit of Happiness. That's how meaningful the episode was to me. It was just so beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. And it really touched on, this feeling of loss, like losing my father. Like you talked about, how you've never lost anyone. You also talk about how, hey, I see my parents 3 times a year. You're talking about that.
Yeah.
And that's how it was for me with my parents for years. Just because of they're in Ohio and I'm in North Carolina and I'm gone, 130 days a year and whatever. And then time just flies by. And then someone's gone. I mean, it's inevitable. And so were just a lot of different. And then when you were with the Mexican family, when your family had dinner with the Mexican family and they had a loved one who was sick, it was just, I thought it was absolutely beautiful. I thought it was great about you is how
go on.
How vulnerable you are.
Yes,
how vulnerable,
agreed.
You're passionate about what you're doing. A lot of enthusiasm. You're compassionate. You're a compassionate person, and you're vulnerable. And all that means that's like being genuine, right? That's like true what it means to be genuine. And so, yeah, really, because you were saying when we communicated email, you're like, I think there's similarities between what I'm doing and what you guys do as a band. And I was like, whatever. And then, I was like, no, this is the documentary version. This is that artistic vision. This is very compatible to what we do. It's very connected.
Thank you for saying. Can I tell you where that came from? Where y'all's documentary, which I love. I mean, talk about a beautiful portrait of a family. By the way, your kids are adorable. There is I think Rick Rubin said it. Like there was. He said something about what makes y'all's music great, and it had something to do with the I don't know, constant willingness to the inner journey. Something along. I don't know what the actual words were, but you really being vulnerable and transparent with the inner journey, and he said that's where the best music comes from. And I guess I've heard that a million times over in every genre of art. But one of the things that I've gotten recently, Meet the Patels was a real life changing moment for me on a lot of levels. It was career changing for me, but it also was life changing for me in the sense that it was the first time that I really understood what making things can mean to me. In fact, I had quit acting twice prior to that because I just felt so vapid. It still feels vapid. Um, I didn't understand what I wanted from this whole thing in entertainment or just entrepreneurship or just in general pursuit of work. Like, well, what do I want? And doing Meet the Patel has taught me, oh, this stuff can be, first of all, it can bring me closer to my family. It made me best friends with my sister. My family, we've been on this journey together. I got to edit them and see them as third party like characters with a full on arc in ways that I never could have. Like, what a gift to be able to see my parents at a distance and craft them as characters. And I mean, talk about appreciation when you do that, when you get to see really the people you love, like with every texture of their character. And I got to do that for myself as well. I was a character in that thing. I was editing it. I got to see my strengths, but I also got to see my flaws. I got to see how I spoke to people I love. And, because I was like viewing myself as a third party, like it was almost without bias. And so talk about a great beginning for me to start to fix some of the things about myself that I don't like, wanting to write a better story for myself in real life. And one of the things that came out of that was I wanted to do more and more things that are personal. So at this point, that gets us to this show even right now. I'm mostly doing things that are extremely personal to me, whether it's because they're intensely uh, introspective or because there's something about them that's academic or that I feel like is making the world around me a better place. Just something where I'm really connecting and getting stuff out of it. And people have said to me, they're like, well, you're doing a lot of stuff about yourself. And I started to feel weird about that. And I saw y'all's documentary and I was like, you know what? I don't care. Like, I'm getting so much out of this. And I love, and when I heard that quote in y'all's music, I was like, oh, that's why I'm doing it.
Yeah, but I think that from being genuine and vulnerable, when you're doing something really personal, which obviously you are doing in Meet the Patels and in Pursuit of Happiness, other people connect to that because they see themselves, right?
Yeah.
Because we all put on for others,
Oh,
but we all can't avoid who we see in the mirror.
well, that was, it's so funny. The thing you said about like there being 50,000 interpretations of each song. I get that. Again, I don't have enough samples as you guys do with so many hit songs, but Meet the Patels was broad enough for me where no matter where I go, people bring it up. And when they tell me what it's meant to me, I've now heard 50,000 different, and that was a huge surprise to me. The only thing that I'm really grateful for is there was a moment we were making it where we tried to do a lot of hand holding. We tried to make it so that people understand it better, so that people relate it better. And then we decided not to do that. We're like, let's get more specific. Let's go into our nuances, and just that's the only thing we're responsible to. And to your point, I think that when you go more specifically into your own stuff, it allows people to pull from it. And I don't understand how it works, but somehow it becomes increasingly relatable to people when you do that, even if their circumstances are entirely different.
Can I ask you real quick, um, the different, because you've been in major motion pictures, right? You've acted in these big movies,
Sure.
and now you're doing these. You've also done these documentaries. So how have the documentaries changed your acting? I mean, will you continue on acting in films and taking on character roles, or do you feel like your future is the pursuit of happiness?
My future is the pursuit of happiness. I think, look, I don't feel the way about acting as I do about uh, filmmaking or entrepreneurship, or for better for worse, I'm not an obsessive act. Like, I don't care if I win an award. I don't care if I become the best actor in the world. That doesn't mean I don't enjoy it sometimes, but I enjoy it the way I think I enjoy playing sports, if that makes sense. And
Sports with a paycheck.
yes, sports.
Kids when they get eat for the first time in a couple of weeks, and you're like, "Daddy did it."
But you know what? I wouldn't be doing it if I wasn't getting paid to do it. I really wouldn't. And I know I'm insanely lucky to be able to say that. But that also helps me. That affects my expectations of what I ask from it. I don't ask acting to provide fulfillment to it. I don't ask acting to give me power. I think those are both very difficult things to get specifically from acting, because it's a kind of thing where you're always asking for other people's permission to do it. You're doing other people's scripts. You're having other people produce. Like, your input in this thing is so difficult unless you're super famous. It's a very difficult profession. It's a hard career. And when it hits, I'm extremely grateful when I'm around a great group of people and I'm having fun and I feel like I'm actually like playing tennis and getting better at this thing. It's awesome. But 95% of the time I've noticed it's not that. And I've noticed that I get much more fulfillment from these other things because there's so much more control in them. And I also I don't know, for better or for worse, I just enjoy these other things more. So I keep acting because it actually leads to more opportunities in these other things that I'm more interested in. Does that make sense? And
yeah.
There's another part to the answer, but I already forgot. What was the question?
Welcome to the road to now.
Who cares? Oh, how's it affected my acting? Well, being in a documentary, one way it significantly impacted my acting, beyond just making it so that I don't need acting anymore, which really frees you up to act better when you remove the desperation from it, is I have a very acute understanding of what it feels like to be myself in front of a camera. And so much of acting training is to A, get rid of your desperation, which got taken care of by having all these other careers, and B, being yourself in some way, manifesting yourself, even if it's in a different character, right? And I got to know what that feels like. I can't even explain it because it seems so I don't know. I feel like that sounds stupid, but I remember having an aha moment on set one day when I was filming something and I noticed that I wasn't being real, that I felt like I was doing something. And I went to, what does it feel like when the camera's there? And what it feels like, this is going to sound stupid, is it just feels like me. I was just being me. And I'm telling you, it's actually really hard to pretend like a camera isn't there. It's hard.
Yeah, and this gets at like one of the things that sorry. One of the things that I thought was interesting is, as someone who has edited many episodes of this podcast,
Right.
finds absolute point of identification with you when you say having to edit yourself and having to edit other people really confronts you with what you do that is obnoxious, what you do well.
Yeah.
And then, you know, especially like doing, like you do something, I don't know if you have this experience, but like we'll do an episode and I'll be like, like, don't do that. Don't do that. And I'll hate myself for 3 days, but then we'll record 5 days later again and I'll do it again and have to listen to it over and over again. Yeah. So I feel that pain. But so much of what you do, it's like, I wrote some notes. It's like, you know, Ravi is a comic and this could be built as a travel show, but it's a lot more than that because everything that happens is firmly placed in a narrative. On the surface, you might think the narrative is Ravi's personal story, but it's so much bigger than that. It's the story of immigrants. It's the story of India. It's the story of the U.S. I mean, there's something in there, right? I mean, like because you're so
did vulnerable. You write like a newspaper article about my show? That was very well. You should send that into the AP or something, man.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
I'd love to, and I'm available. No, I just write notes when I'm listening to these things. But one of the things I've wondered is because it's so I mean, a good
Yeah.
story is one where you can find the intersection of your narrative and the story in front of you, right? So when I teach history, it's like that's the premise. But
yeah, finding a narrative or some sort of Trojan horse into the stuff that you want to teach.
Trojan
right?
horse sounds suspicious, though. You
Well,
find some kind of like a Belarusian spy into the entire.
yeah.
But what I wondered is, like, did you find new narratives in the footage you shot? Because you guys must have shot for days and days. I mean, you were in Mexico for several days. Everywhere you went, you were there. When you went through there, did you find new personal narratives?
Each episode we shot 5 to 6 days.
Must have been fun going through the footage.
Well, that's not a ton of time, to be honest, for that long of a show. I mean, that means you're grinding for that amount of time. You're setting up a lot of things. And so one of the challenges, actually, when I was making that documentary, I keep bringing up Meet the Does, when I was making that's true verite. That's true camera following what I'm doing. When you make a show like this, you have to anticipate quite a bit. You have to plan quite a bit. You have to get permission to go shoot at certain places. You have to be confident that that's going to be a pretty good, interesting conversation. So you have this whole producing team. They're doing research on the academic things that we want to explore. I'm in my office reading books, and we're trying to find the scenes that we think are going to reflect the themes of these books in a way that feels very active. There's a lot of planning going on. Now, I hate that stuff. I am all about being in the moment, being prepared, and then reacting organically, allowing for spontaneity. So you actually have to do a lot of preparation in making a show like that in order to create constructs for spontaneity within whatever those boundaries are. So we did that. And then the other thing I insisted was, hey, we need to have a camera follow me around in between things. I know that's not normal, but I need to do that. I was like, because I know that some of the best conversations in life happen in between things. They happen in the car. I mean, Bob, you're in a band. You guys have probably spent a lot of time traveling together. Ben, if anything, you know this just from family road trips. The most beautiful conversations, they aren't linear. They might happen when you leave the exit from your place and they go away for 2 hours. There's music, there's naps, there's fights. And then 2 hours later, some part of that conversation pops back up and continues and advances in a really beautiful way. So those are the kinds of things that I was really insistent on trying to capture. And, if I get to make another season of this show, there's going to be a lot more spontaneity.
They gotta let you make another decision of this. It's too good, man.
Dude, I hope you're right. Hey, Bob, wait, I have a question. Bob, I have a question to ask you. You made a documentary. You were on camera. What was that a comfortable experience for you guys? How did that affect you? Like, I'm sure you were not. I doubt you just walked in and be like, "Oh, this is classic Bob right here, being himself." And did it affect y'all's music in any way, or did making that documentary affect y'all's music in any way?
Sure. So me, I can tell you, like, the idea that, oh, I don't even see the camera. Yeah, right. No, I see the camera. I was most comfortable when I had something that was very me to do, playing bass or, being in a real organic conversation. And
Right.
when those moments, when it was those moments, I could be engaged with someone or engaged in something, I felt very, very comfortable being in front of the camera. But when it wasn't, and it's like that all the, when I can't be engaged in something, then it feels very awkward. The camera's awkward.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But the other guys, like, I think Seth is more towards then you'd have to ask him, but I think he's more towards I don't see the camera, or the camera does not change me. And then Scott is opposite of Seth, where he's just like, give me the camera. Give me, he'll just talk all day long. He'll talk all day long on that camera. And really that is him, because he'll talk all day long to anybody, like anybody and everybody. He'll just like, we've been in situations where, in the old days we play a show and then you're in the crowd and you're talking to everybody. But we'd have to pull Scott away to get to be 3 a.m. Come on, we got to go. And he's just people walking away from him, like, hey, get back here,
Ravi, one time I went to catch these guys in Minnesota, and me and Scott went to get lunch, and we came back like a while after. But I just kind of walked away from Scott at some point, and I walked on the bus, and they were like, "Where is he?" And I was like, "He's talking to people. We've just been talking to people." And they were like, "What is wrong with you? We've got to find him. He will talk to people till he cannot sing tonight. That's why we've got to get him on the bus." And he would just do that.
It could be security guard. It could be ambulance worker. It doesn't, like, anybody hanging around backstage. It does not matter who that person is, where they come from. And that's the beauty of Scott. That's like
he's got all sorts of beauty. Though both of those dudes are like borderline perfect. They're both insanely handsome and talented. And now they apparently don't even get nervous in front. Do you get nervous at all when you perform?
The weirdest times. Yeah. They're like, it'll be, we'll be at the Greek in LA, that beautiful outdoor amphitheater. And I'm not nervous, but if we're in Lincoln, Nebraska on a Thursday night or something, just kidding. I don't know.
So did making that documentary or watching yourself in it, did it have any, and if there's no impact, it doesn't matter. You can say that, but did it have any sort of impact on your life, or whether it's in your self-perception or your relationship with the band, your journey with your daughter? Which, by the way, I can't tell you how touching that story is. I'm interested in kind of knowing where you're at with it now, if you're open to discussing it. But
she'll probably be up in a couple hours. We can go get her.
yeah, we did.
It was so well done, and we were treated. I feel like my family was treated so well, and they told when they were filming, like, we're going to be so respectful with this footage, like of my family, and it was just, it was beautiful. And as far as what for the band, it was just what I got from watching was like, they got it right. Because we were in a documentary. We didn't make a documentary. We were the subjects of a documentary,
which is scary.
Like Bonifiglio and Judd Apatow, they made the documentary,
right?
And it was a lot of it was verite, that style.
Yeah.
Well, we don't know if there's a story. Like, Mike's been on this show. He's told everybody this.
Yeah.
They didn't know what they were going for the first year. They didn't know what the story was.
Yeah.
But it was affirming, I would say.
Yeah.
And because it just showed the genuine and the reality of who we are as a band, who those guys are. And then as far as my family goes, I was getting letters and comments from other families with special needs children saying, man, it felt so good to see your family on the screen. See your daughter get a G-tube, get food in her G-tube, because that's our life every day, and we're not represented on the big screen. And so,
yeah. I hope it was. Sorry, I interrupted you. This is a bad genetic quality I have. It must have advanced your. I know you're doing this nonprofit work. It must have been helpful, hopefully, to that end as well. I hope it brought some attention to that a little bit. Man, I'm just gonna say one more time, the way that your family, not just your immediate family, but the family of the band, and everyone came, supported you through that time. That's got to be a testament to who each of you are individually to each other, because that's not normal to have that degree of commitment during a hard time like that. And it's just, I think that when I watch your documentary, I'm not seeing a story about a band. I feel like I saw a story about, it's a family wish fulfillment film. That's what I feel like I saw. A bunch of people who really love each other and support each other through what otherwise can be actually quite divisive. A lot of bands are not like that, buddy.
It's the same thing. We all talked about marriage. It's like we're going to make this work kind of. And, I think when you say, well, we're going to make this work in terms of marriage, it's like you're taking romance out of it or something. You're taking something out of it. That doesn't, no, that means like we are going to love this hard, so hard to survive this awful thing, and we're going to love this thing to a victory. And that's kind of like what what I learned about Scott and Seth when Hallie got sick was that, right, we could have parted ways. They could have said, you know, you can't come back, whatever they could have done. And they weren't like that. We just wasn't like that. It was from day one. It was like, you do what you
Yeah.
got to do. You come back, you got a place, kind of a thing.
Was that other bass player? Was he just way better than you though? Was it like
He's so much better. Paul's,
Yeah, it was pity that they brought you back still.
he's a real bass player.
Oh, come
Well,
on.
well, look, for what it's worth, I've built my life on pity. I think you take what you get. It doesn't
Paul was he's such a great guy. Like, and this, man, again, this is testament to the family aspect of what we do. Paul, we knew Paul from Langhorne. He played with Langhorne Slim. And so when I came back, Paul was a part of the family, and it wasn't, we couldn't let him go though. So we said, hey, you learn how to play piano, you stay with us. So he just learned how to play piano to stay in the band. And he was in the band another 2 or 3 years, whatever it was.
Oh, wow.
Last year.
That is awesome, man. That's very cool.
Ravi, you really, like, just as an outside observer on this conversation, just to kind of like emphasize this, I mean, like, those guys lived in a van together, like Seth, Scott, Bob, and Dane, for years. I mean, it's like, you see, like, how it is. It's like, you were like, Meet the Patels. People were like, I mean, they were on the road, like, what, 200 and some days a year?
Yeah, at one point, yeah. It was ridiculous. And thank God they didn't film the documentary then.
Well, I'm annoyed that they didn't really talk about that period, because to me, that is the that would be the first baby in the marriage moment, I'm guessing. That's when you probably had your biggest fights, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I mean, it never got bad, and it never gets bad between Scott and Seth. But that's hard. But it is hard when you have that many people in a small space for long periods of time, and you're tired.
Yeah, be glad I wasn't in the band. I would have been the one. Everyone would have pissed. I would have pissed everyone off.
So I was at that one point.
Right. Wait,
I think in every band I was in.
Wait, Ben, how do you come in the picture?
How do I come in the picture? I'm in the picture of Bob.
In the picture of Bob, yeah.
And
I went to high school with Scott and Seth and Dane. So
wait, which high school did you go to?
Mount Pleasant High School, Cabarrus County, son.
Bro.
Class of 97.
First of all, that means we definitely have friends in common. 100%. I know also, what's that neighborhood? Zamosa Heights? Do you remember that neighborhood in Concord?
Oh, dude. Yeah, Zamosa Acres. It's where Dane lives. It's where Dane lives. Wait,
bro,
cut that out.
Run those streets, son.
Dude, really?
Wait, bro, you catch me in Zamosa any weekend, every weekend. Dude, I have so many bros from Concord.
Really?
Yes. Like my main, like in college, you have like your main hubs. One of my main hubs was a Concord only house with 7 dudes from Concord, and they're all 97 finished high school. So 100% we know people. We'll go through the list of names later, but we definitely have boys in common.
That's awesome.
Where did you go to high school?
Myers Park in Charlotte.
Oh, you went to Myers Park. Damn.
Yeah.
I renovated like half the houses in that neighborhood when I was in college. So, not the same as having boys.
You were in the flip game in college?
No, I was the guy. I was the guy whose family, who didn't go to college, so he wanted to go to college and had to build houses on Tuesdays and Thursdays and Saturdays to pay for classes on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So.
Respect. Did you appreciate college more because you did that?
Well, I was an idiot for the first 3 years of college and spent 3 years at a community college and never finished my 2-year degree. But the job itself, actually, my boss, Jerry England Renovations, you probably saw signs all around there from them. But that guy, like, that's one of the greatest teachers of my life. He taught me that an excuse wasn't as good as getting it done. And he wouldn't fire me. Like, he did one time, and then he brought me back. And then after that, like, there was many times where I deserved it, but he just punished me, and I couldn't leave. I didn't have any money. So he just kicked my ass. It was amazing.
Isn't it wild at this age to just think, that period of time seemed so recent until recently. Now it seems so far away. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I'm like referencing things, it's funny, like as a comic, you're always trying to think of like things that'll be funny. And then as like being 41. I mean, I remember like 3 years ago, I tried to do. You guys remember hypercolor shirts?
Of course.
Okay.
Of course.
You know
I
who
didn't get
does?
one. I never got anything.
I got a bootleg one once it was for sale, like at the Dollar General or something, but I never had like a, but I tried to do a bit about like 3-4 years ago, a bit about hypercolor shirts, and people were like, and like, cause all like no stand-up comics, except for like 2 other ones in Nashville that are open mics, you know, or, you know, they're all like 25 and they're like, what is that?
But they're not in that hypercolor game. You were trying to corner a market.
Yeah, I really, you know, they call, they call me the Richard Pryor.
Ben?
They call me the Richard Pryor of hypercolor t-shirt jokes. So,
but nobody got it, correct?
Nobody. And I was like, man, this is gonna be funny. It's like, it's way harder to lie to your teacher that you're not getting bullied when you wear a hypercolor t-shirt. You just come in and like around your neck is blue, and they're like, what happened? And you're like, nothing. I was just hugging somebody. And it was not a very well worked out bit, but like the best part was just having people stare at me. Like, you know how when you tell a bad joke, people will be like, they were just emotionless. So,
but isn't it, you know, when you say that, what it makes me think is, Bob, are you the same? You're a couple years older than us, right? How old are you?
49.
49. So you're a few years old. But one thing that I feel like all of us were on the tail end of generations that have very nuanced, like shared experiences growing up. Like, I don't know that kids today can bring up hypercolor and they're all like, yeah, that was wild. Like, I remember like hypercolor, maybe before that, jam shorts. You remember jam shorts? Those were big in Concord, bro. You know, whether it was like the 8-bit Nintendo or, you know, like we all did everything kind of together. And I feel like a lot of it had to do with technology. Like, I didn't have my first cell phone till like, I don't know, maybe junior, senior year of college. And that was really when digital media things started getting nichier. Before that time, like I just had such a specific, like, you know, we were partying in high school, driving car, like TPing people when we were 12, you know, like doing all this stuff that I feel like kids today, I don't know. I look back, I guess everyone looks back on their growing up with fondness, but I feel like I look back and I think, oh, like it's not just nostalgia. I feel like I got really lucky. I got this amazing thing just at the cutoff.
Did you have a Nextel?
No. What was my first phone?
It's like a walkie-talkie.
Dude, I didn't get any of the things, man. Like, you remember how growing up the Jordans were always a huge deal, right? You guys remember that, right? Shoes were a big deal. No, I grew up. In fact, my wife was just making fun of me for this because our daughter got like something showed up in the mail, and I made some comment. I always make this comment, which is must be nice. Like, this kid gets more shit in 1 week than I did my entire upbringing. And she's like, okay, we get it. Like, nobody cares that you didn't get that you got like 3 things your whole life. And I'm like, I'm just saying it's crazy. And I was saying, like, one of my favorite stories, which she's able to recite word for word now because I've told her so many times, was like, all I wanted growing up was the Jordans. The new Jordans was such a big event. It was an immediate show of status. Y'all know exactly what I'm talking about.
There was only one at a time.
One at a time.
One at a time.
One at a time. Huge deal. Okay. Which is why, by the way, so many dudes our age now have like sneaker complexes and are buying Jordans. Like, it's hilarious. I have 3 pairs of Jordan in my closet. They look hideous. My wife's like, when are you going to wear those? I was like, I've got a plan. But I remember I finally got my dad, like one day, I don't remember what it was, but he's like, what do you want? Tell me what anything. What do you want? And I go, you know, I want Jordans. Okay, there's a 4th grade. We go to the mall. I could not be more excited. We're going to go to that Champ Sports or wherever, and we're going to get these Jordans. The ones with the little, actually, I'll show you.
Oh! This whole podcast was just to show us the Jordans. That's all it was.
He's like, honey, I know, honey, I haven't worn the Jordans, but I'm going to show them off. I'm going to show them.
This is the complex. Okay.
Oh,
this is it. Okay?
Yeah, dude.
Oh, man.
You remember these?
That was like 1990.
This is, whoa, dude, that's pretty good. I think we're 89, around 1989. These are maybe the 4s, as I want to call it. Say these little triangle. Anyway,
man,
we're getting ready. I'm telling you, one of the happiest days of my life. Okay. We're going to the mall. Now, Champ Sports is to the left. And just at that little T section on the right, there's a place called, we're in South Park Mall, by the way. In
Okay.
Charlotte.
Been there many times.
Oh,
This was
40,
before
40.
South Park became the fancy. This
40,
was
40.
Yeah.
I like the way you humble brag that you went to South Park Mall and then you were like, no, this is before people started going there. So
No,
you
'cause
somehow hipstered it up too.
No, South Park wasn't fancy. Like that's where my high school was 2 minutes from there. Myers Park High School is right around the corner from there. So that was kind of my hood, you know. Like anyway, there's this place called Kinney shoe stores. Now Kinney, some of you might know the Floor Shimes of the world. This is like a mall dress shoe store.
Yeah.
My dad says, why don't we go see what they have? And I don't know what's going. I don't know what's going on. Like, yeah, let's pop in there on the way to get my Jordans. Now, in the back of these dress shoe stores, y'all have been to these places, right?
Yeah, dude.
In the back, they always have like 3 sneakers. Okay. I swear to God, guys, I'm not making this up. One of the 3 pairs they have is the exact Jordan that I want, but it says in the back, Stadia. Stadia. These are fake Jordans.
Just worse than not having anything.
And I don't know if this slippery, cheap little criminal looked this up beforehand. In fact, I haven't confronted it on. I should confront him on this.
This will be season 2.
It might be. I
Trip to
know.
South Park Mall.
I know for sure that I'm scarred from this. As evidence, I just showed you a shoe.
Yeah.
30 years later. Okay. So next thing you know, I'm showing up to school in a pair of fake Jordans. Now, 4th grade, you walk into class. There's no status symbol greater than a real pair of Jordans. What do you think a fake pair of Jordans is?
It's the opposite. Oh my God.
I'm already this like short Indian dude. Like things weren't great to begin with.
So wait. Let me ask you this. You had to know that when you bought them, right? I mean, I'm assuming when you walked into class that day, were you like, I know, like, did your dad make you wear them, or were you like, I'm going to pull this off. I'm going to jump real high. They're going to think they're real.
I wish I could answer this for you. Okay. I don't know if I have if it's like a PTSD amnesia thing. I don't remember any of that. And I don't even, in my mind, my memory of it was like, cool. I got these shoes. Cool.
I guess like when the kids came at you with the soap inside the socks and beat you enough times, you just forgot exactly what happened.
You know what it is? It's the cult mentality. My dad had me in this cult of Indian frugality where I didn't even know that I was in a cult. I didn't know. I only found out 30 years later in therapy when I'm, sitting there in a pair of Jordans.
But you were in this cult, but in pursuit of happiness, you realize with your parents and the beautiful marriage that they have and the amazing sense of family that your culture seems to promote, it's maybe not such a bad cult to be in.
Bob, he just ran out with a box of the Jordans he couldn't get when he was in 4th grade. I don't think the lesson here is that everything's okay.
It was a very nice way to bring the train back on the tracks, though, Bob. And it should be applauded.
So Ravi, let me ask you.
Yeah.
We hope for a season 2 of Pursuit of Happiness. Mm-hmm. We hope for an Avett Brothers tour in 2021. Mm-hmm. None of us know what's going to happen. How are you doing? Yeah, of course, you can do your promo work like what you're doing now, promoting your documentary. You can do that all day long at home on Zoom. But how are you looking to creating art, in the next year, given the situation that we're living through?
Oh man, I mean, God. So first off, I've got 2 podcasts and an audio documentary that I've started doing. So, I'm trying to now just do stuff that I think works within the current constraints. And whenever things get back to shooting, I have various things that I'm attached to as an actor. I'm hopeful that I'm able to do more of this show. I don't really know what to expect moving forward. I guess it's a good time to be in the business of documenting yourself, because I can kind of do that in some way or another, no matter what. What do you think's going to happen with y'all?
Well, I mean, I'm hoping that we have shows starting in March next year, and there'll be Roads Now Lives as well. But I believe we get a vaccine in January or February. I believe frontline workers get it in March or April. I believe that the masses of us start to get it in June and July. So I think that this time next year is when this is Bob's realist. Welcome to Bob's realism world that I live in my
No,
head.
I have the same timeline. I think that makes sense.
I
Yeah.
really do believe that we're looking at this time next year, best case scenario, where we have a sense of normalcy and we're able to be playing concerts.
Bob, this is the most like there. I don't know if you noticed this, but I was paying attention to it for a period of time. Every time we'd record an episode, you'd be like, it's going to be like the end of 2020. Like this would be like early on. You'd be like, then it's going to be the beginning of 2021. Then you'd be like, it could be 2025. And I was like, Bob's going to be like, we'll be dead before anybody can go on the road. But this is like, it sounds like you've settled on it, huh?
Best case scenario, and
Measured response.
given what may happen here between now and November, but best case scenario is this time next year. That's what I say.
I like it.
There are dates. The dates are there for March of 2021. There'll be dates, and there are dates for March, April, May, June, July. But I personally suspect when we get to those points, we won't be ready. But this is Bob Crawford's talking. This is not.
This is what we want. We want that Crawford juice. God, that sounded gross. Well, by the way, you know what I'm realizing? I'm gonna ask we had tickets to Red Rocks this summer to see y'all. I'm wondering if like you might owe me money, dude. I might send you a Venmo request.
No, we didn't get that money. So
I didn't know you didn't get that money either. Ben, what about you? Are you teaching right now? Is there?
Yeah, man. I mean, like, I'll send you. I said, like, basically, my guest bedroom is now like an AV studio. I mean, like, I've got, this is the old green screen back there, and I've just got lighting, and I just redid it, and like, so I'll be teaching on Zoom. I'll be doing lectures and then editing them, and then doing discussion sessions, like kind of small groups. But just trying to maintain the connection, man, because like there's another thing about your show is like how much things are more meaningful when people are in them. And as much as, I mean, like it's right now, I mean, the kind of, this isn't what you're supposed to do, but like the kind of, the gate's been lifted for just phoning it in. And that really worries me. I think most of us who are educators that care about it are putting time into it, but it's really just made me throw like everything I can into it because, I mean, you might know this from your experience, man, but like one of the things that is most meaningful to me about, being a college professor is like seeing people come in from families and coming in from towns and they've got talent that they never knew they had. And it's not that, it's not like that they're from bad places. It's just that if you're from like Mount Pleasant, North Carolina, no one's going to know if you're like got talent to be a physicist. Cause we just, it's not that kind of a town. Right. So you see this stuff, you see these talents and you help pull it out of them and then you help push them forward. And you can't do that unless you connect. And the biggest worry to me has been that I've built good rapport with students and I think gotten to know students and help them in their paths because, they come to my class and they kind of see that I'm approachable. And so the biggest challenge for me right now, I mean, like we'll be doing the classes, right? But the biggest challenge for me is like, is in this format, letting them know that I'm here for them and that I really do want to sit down and talk to them if they've got the time and they want to do it. And then, sharing the story of the country with them in ways that they can take away. Because, my class, I teach 2 mandatory classes, U.S. History 1, U.S. History 2. You got to take them to graduate. And I'm the last line between them and their history education and then what's coming after that. And I don't know if you've seen The World lately, but it's not exactly very good history. So.
Right. Well, I would imagine that text is evolving quickly too now as we're starting to add more balance to the stories we tell about ourselves.
Yeah.
I have a question. What you guys have been on this journey with this podcast for a little bit now. What's it done for you? Like, what are there a few pieces of wisdom that you feel like that you remember most from this journey, or things that, like, if I was about to join this journey with you at the top of it, what would you tell me to aim for?
Okay, I'll start first. The biggest, like the single biggest piece of advice I can give you is to start a podcast with someone from the Avett Brothers. It's probably
Right.
I don't know how many of them are
Which
left
is why
available.
I'm here, by the way. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So
Right.
no, the advice is like, just like get somebody that knows how the technology works, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like go through a tutorial, because that kind of stuff, and like knowing how to launch a podcast,
Mm-hmm.
like those two things that will save you so much time down the road, especially the launch. Like you can't replicate a good launch once you're like 10 episodes in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would hire a staff.
I'm like, started with Bob Crawford. Bob Crawford's like, started with Ben Sawyer. So that's cool.
And what have y'all, just outside of the technical elements, what's the wisdom you feel like you've gleaned from this experience, whether it's actual like life advice about, America, or wisdom about America, or whether it's about collaborating or something you can get out of a pursuit? I mean, I guess there's a lot of areas here.
Well, I think it's like being in a. I equate what Ben and I do to be like we're in a band, and that it's like part of the greatness of what we've been able to. We're going on 5 years in May. Like we'll have been doing this for 5 years, and so I think what I realized when we began doing live, so last year Ben and I began doing live shows, and that was the realization, or it made what we've built tangible, right? By having these, being able to be face to face with our listeners.
Feedback, right?
Feedback, yes. And then as far as we started this in May of 2016 when no one thought Donald Trump was going to become president of the United States.
Right.
Our first episode was about populism, thinking of Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump. And it is, something that I've realized, and I'm also getting my master's in history. So I've been doing that I've been amateur history player on the podcast because I'm not a historian actually, and then learning how to be a historian, the science of being a historian and putting it together. It's like the importance of doing real work, doing real research, and then talking to the people who've done real research, like Heather Cox Richardson and all, all the great historians we've had, Doug Brinkley, and just could go on and on about the great guests we've had.
Yeah, I think also like the thing that I would say that from that perspective, like what I've taken away from it is, like when I started it, there's like a real wall a lot of times between the academy and the general public, and it keeps good information like from being shared. And I wondered if people would listen to this podcast, because there's, we obviously we have like you on, we have Joe Kwan on, but a lot of times we have like academic historians on.
Oh yeah.
And I wondered, would people care about that? And I wondered, would people in the academy see me as like going vulgar by doing something like this? And I've been delighted at the number of people who have like loved interviews with like people from the academy, and how much my colleagues have supported this and shared it. It's been amazing. I think you find that people are interested in the things that you care about.
Do you think that it's changed the way? So one of my favorite things about podcasts.
Are we recording this for your podcast?
I was wondering like halfway through. I was like, "Is this?" He's like, "We're working on a podcast project."
Is that okay, guys? One of my favorite things about this is the last one, I promise. One of my favorite things about podcasting, though, is there's a very unique intimacy to these kinds of conversations, and the goal is, I don't know, it's an egoless kind of conversation. The real goal is all about just great conversation, and I'm just curious, like one of the things for me, it's like when in doing podcasts, I think it's made my conversations in real life better to some extent, because I actually I'm a little, I don't want to say the word isn't tenacious, but I try a little harder to actually like to dig when I'm talking.
Well, it's about being curious. I mean, isn't that the greatest? I was thinking about my son and advice for him, and I think the greatest piece of advice I could ever give him for everything he ever approaches or wants to do is be curious.
Yeah,
be curious. You want to learn about it. You know, like let's. Yeah, you got to be curious. You got to be curious. And if you are naturally curious, you're going to have a great podcast.
Very cool. Very cool.
Well, Ravi, this has been a delight. I believe we all have a new friendship.
I hope so.
New friendship. I look forward to playing golf with you and your father when you come back to North Carolina.
I look forward to you moving to Nashville, right in my neighborhood, which has all the things that you've actually talked about this time that you want. So,
probably.
Do you really?
That's where the LA people and the New York people, they go to Nashville. That's like kind of the natural place for you to go, probably.
Why did you say it like that, Bob? Why did you say it like that? You think you're better than me? You know what? Where do you live? I'm going to come to your neighborhood, bro.
Okay.
Yeah. You know what I mean? I'm going to buy a farm up the street from you.
Please do.
You don't know me.
Yeah.
You're right, though. That is why Nashville seems like a good time.
Nashville's great, man.
The band started going to Nashville in 2003. And we watched every time we would, go back, we watched people coming from New York and LA and creating this.
Yeah.
And it's, you know what? If I didn't live, there's only one other place I'd probably want to live. Well, two. I'd want to live in Nashville or Memphis. And Nashville, it's because it's where my business is, right?
Yeah.
There's so much film business there now. There's so much. I mean, I think it's a great place for you guys, and you're only hours away from family. So
that's kind of I'm like, it's kind of a good middle ground. I can fly to LA and New York really easily. There's some entertainment. But look, we're also going to check out all my buddies are selling Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill really hard to me right now. And I don't blame them. And I love the idea that I could drive to the beach in 2 hours or whatever. And like,
is Joe Kwan's house still for sale?
It is.
Road to Now Real Estate.
Road to Kwan's house?
Yeah, dude.
I'll text him and I'll give him your number.
It's a great house.
But yeah, man, this has been really fun chatting with y'all.
The price just dropped.
What'd you say? Oh, we got it. Yeah, the price just dropped. Oh, Kwan's getting desperate. This just did. I really appreciate you guys talking to me, man. It's been great. And I hope I get to see you again soon. All right.
Yeah, and everybody, don't forget Ravi Patel's The Pursuit of Happiness. Go check it out. I've seen all 4 of the episodes, and they are all delightful. And I think once you watch the first one, just remember this, guys who are listening right now. When you get to the scene where they're dancing on the beach, you will be so glad you watched the first episode. I'm not going to spoil it.
So great.
You'll be hooked.
Sure.